All right. Good afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you're watching this. I'm going to go through Chapter 5, Section 3. A lot of stuff going on, so we're going to be kind of running through. Please feel free to pause this and get the words that you need, especially because I'm going to be going kind of quickly to get through it, and I get 15 minutes to record these. So here we go. We left off after the Boston Massacre, where British troops fired on innocent American colonists. As a result of that, the British actually left the colonists alone for 3 years. They felt pretty bad about it. They didn't pass any new taxes. They didn't send over new troops. And life kind of got back to normal. And then in 1773, they passed the Tea Act. And the Tea Act was more to save a company than in any way to affect the colonists. They were aware that the colonists weren't happy. So they made sure that the Tea Act did not raise the price on tea. It was not a tax. All it did is give the British East Indies Company a monopoly on the tea trade. And the reason why is the British East Indies Tea Company was about to fail. They were about to go to business, and the British Crown needed them. They were also, in addition to transporting tea on their huge fleet of ships, they were also taking soldiers to the colonies. They were helping fight piracy. They were doing a lot of stuff that the British Crown needed because they had a really big empire and a very small island. So they needed this company to help them. If they had failed, it would have hurt the empire a great deal. So they gave them a monopoly on tea to try and help save them and keep them in business. Part of that monopoly, though, is that normally if a company is the only company that sells something, they raise prices. You know, if you're the only, company in town, you can charge whatever you want. But the East India Company promised to keep prices low. And they did. But what they also did is send the absolute worst tea to the colonists. In addition, a whole bunch of colonists lost their jobs and shops because some of the shops sold tea, or they had fleets that transported tea. And all of a sudden, they couldn't do that anymore. So a whole bunch of people lost their shops, lost their money, lost their savings, lost their jobs. And then on top of that, the tea in the colonies was pretty bad. So we're going to see a new round of protests and a new round of anger. In response to the Tea Act, the committees of correspondence, which were just created to kind of keep all the colonies on the same page, we're going to write to each other. We're going to make sure that everybody knows what the British are doing in all the colonies. Well, they start to take action. And a lot of those members of those committees of correspondence join a new group called the Sons of Liberty. And the Sons of Liberty are going to be organizing boycotts, but they're also going to be, doing some smuggling. They're going to take action. And the Sons of Liberty become a bit militant. And they start trying to block all of the tea from coming off the ships. Now, this, of course, makes it hard to get tea in the colonies, but it's going to hurt the East India Company. They didn't just form a boycott on this because colonists needed their tea too much. They knew nobody would actually stop drinking tea. So they're going to harass the dock workers. They're going to throw rocks or intimidate anybody who's supposed to take that tea off the ship. They're going to make those people not want to show up to their jobs. Well, in Philadelphia and New York, two of the largest ports, this works. But in Boston, the governor of Boston has had enough. He's had enough of all of this protest stuff. He's going to actually order the ships to be unloaded. In Philadelphia and New York, they just said, you know what? Fine, keep the tea on the boats. In Boston, the governor said, you're colonists, you're members of the British government, or British Empire. You have to do what you're told. And he orders the ships to be unloaded. He says, I will use troops if necessary. So a bunch of the Sons of Liberty, after quite likely was a heavy night of drinking, disguised themselves as Native Americans by putting like a feather in their hair and some war paint on their face, but they still wear like their fancy suits and their normal hats. And so they're not really disguised as Native Americans. They go onto the ships and they toss all of the tea off. Remember, tea is made out of leaves, and it's made out of dry leaves. You can't transport it wet. It ruins the tea. So if you imagine how many dry leaves it would take to make 90,000 pounds of tea, it was a massive amount of tea from several ships, all dumped into the harbor. So for one fantastic day, Boston Harbor was the largest cup of tea in the world. Back then it was worth thousands of dollars. Today it's worth millions of dollars of tea tossed into the harbor. This was more a symbolic gesture. It was not about the tea. It was about being told what to do. The citizens of Boston, not all the citizens, by the way, just the really fired up citizens were sick of being told what to do. So they throw all the tea into the harbor. This is kind of the last straw for the British government. They've been trying really hard to get along with the colonists, and I feel like they're not going to be able to. So they pass what are called the Intolerable Acts. In Great Britain, they call them the Coercive Acts. To coerce somebody is to force them in the line. In America, they're called the Intolerable Acts. And there's 4 new laws. The first one is going to close the port of Boston. Boston was the center of the problem. They're not punishing the rest of the colonies. They're just going to punish Massachusetts and Boston. When they close that port, though, that's putting hundreds and hundreds of people out of business, or hundreds and hundreds of dock workers unemployed. People aren't going to be able to feed their families. This is really drastic and extreme. It hurts Great Britain quite a bit, too, because a lot of their goods are coming in and out of Boston. But they close the port of Boston until the tea gets paid back, until the tea company gets paid back. The second and third laws take power away from the local and state governments that were created by the colonists and give that power back to the crown. In other words, you don't get to have your meetings anymore. You don't get to decide things anymore. You're going to now become like a crown colony that gets completely controlled by the British Parliament and the king. You lost your democracy. And they weren't full democracies yet, but they had some power. Power's gone. And the fourth one's going to make it so that not only do the colonies have to pay for the troops, the Quartering Act made it so you had to pay for the troops, they're going to start putting the troops right in people's houses. So you would come home from dinner if you were a Boston colonist, and especially if you were a Son of Liberty or a member of the Committee of Correspondence. The British knew who these people were. You would come home and there'd just be 3 soldiers at dinner with you. You had to house them. You had to feed them. They would live with you. And this was one of the ways that the British tried to control these rebels, is by putting soldiers right in their houses. So now you've invaded their privacy. You've taken their jobs away in a lot of cases. And you've taken away their rights to vote on things. This is super heavy stuff. I mean, they're not just flat out killing them, but this is kind of just short of that. In addition, it's going to pass the Quebec Act. If you remember, the proclamation of 1763 said nobody can go past this line and anybody over here has to move back. Well, they took another step and said that all of the territory taken during or after the French and Indian War is now part of Canada. And this only matters because Canadians had very different rules than the American colonists did, but it also means that the American colonists couldn't move out there anymore, nor were they ever going to. It's partly a symbolic gesture, but it is a kind of like a smack in the face of the colonists who had fought to free up this land for settlement. And it did force anybody who lived out there to move back into the 13 colonies, to move back into America instead of Canada. So this is a lot of different ways to try and prove to the colonists that they're not in charge, that the British Crown is in charge. The colonists, of course, are not going to take this well. So a bunch of other colonies started having meetings and started passing resolutions of support to the citizens of Boston, saying if they can do this to Boston, they can do this to any of us. The committees of correspondence start writing furiously to each other, and they decide that it is finally time to meet. And again, Ben Franklin called for an Albany Plan of Union. A bunch of people didn't show up. They voted to not unite anymore. But the committees of correspondence are actually going to meet for the first time, and they're going to send delegates to a meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Independence Hall. That's where they always do these things. And they get together in what's known as the First Continental Congress, which suggests that there will be more than one, and indeed there will. The First Continental Congress didn't really agree on a lot, but they did agree on a few basic things, and one is that we need to stick together. One of the colonies, I believe it was Georgia, didn't go to the First Continental Congress. You can Google that on your own if you want. But this is a who's who of the American Revolution. Sam Adams, George Washington, John Adams. Tom Jefferson's not there yet. He's still not quite involved. But yeah, it's kind of a lot of biggies are there. And they come to just 2 basic conclusions. First off, England's got to stop punishing Massachusetts, because you're punishing the citizens for the actions of just a few citizens. It'd be like if 1 or 2 kids misbehaved at school and everybody got detention. Or a few people on a block were setting fires and the police arrested everybody on the block, right? They're not punishing just the people who did it. They're punishing everyone. And they feel like this is just painting everybody with a big brush instead of figuring out who actually did it. And they also state that, and this is treasonous, that the colonies have the right to govern themselves and tax themselves, which means they are not a colony. This is not technically a Declaration of Independence, but it kind of is. It's saying we want to remain part of the British Empire, but completely rule ourselves. That's not what a colony is, and that's certainly not what you tell a king. This is treason, okay? But that's it. They don't put together an army. They don't start raising money. They don't declare themselves independent. They just agree, we're going to work together tolerable acts got to go, and we have the right to govern ourselves. So the British double down. They send in even more troops. They occupy Boston Harbor with another 12,000 troops or something like that. The colonists, seeing the writing on the wall, start to gather weapons and ammo and start to train their militias. And militias were just small, little groups of army men. They weren't really army, so they were like 10 to 12 guys from town. Or in a place like Boston, you might have a couple hundred. They were the butchers, the bakers, the candlestick makers, the plumbers. The guys, they would meet on the weekend and do a couple hours worth of drills. They weren't professional army. Horribly unreliable troops, but better than nothing. They want to make sure that they're not a threat to the British Army, so they don't feel like they're threatened, because then the British Army will shut them down. But they also want to let the British government know that they mean business. So we start to see Minutemen training. The Minutemen is the name particularly of the Boston militia, but a lot of militias. And we start to see them kind of secretly stashing away weapons and ammo in case they ever have to fight the British. This, of course, is completely illegal. Americans were allowed to have their own weapons ammo, but they weren't allowed to build up a supply that you can take on the government with. There's very similar rules in America today. You can have a gun, but you can't have a missile system. You can't take on the government with your weapons. The British find out about one of the weapon stashes in nearby Lexington. Lexington is just outside of Boston. So he sends 700 troops to go take the weapons and capture the colonial leaders. A guy named Paul Revere rides around warning everybody that the British were marching on Lexington to take the stuff. The Minutemen mobilize, send an army out, and go try to body block the British from taking the weapons. When they show up, there's just a few Americans, maybe a little over 100, against 700 actual British soldiers. Nobody knows who fired the first shot, but both sides fire. 8 Americans are killed. No soldiers were killed at that one. The British actually take the stuff. They gather the weapons and ammo. They start to march back to Boston. On the way, the Americans, hiding around the corner, hiding in trees, ambushing the British, pick them off left and right, and the British just continue to march in that square down the road, drum and fife playing, and the Americans are hiding everywhere. The militia have been called out from all these local towns, and they're just taking pot shots at the British. Okay, this is really important for a few reasons. First off, colonists have never acted together to fight the British. This is rebellion. This is officially, we're going to fight you guys. Secondly, the cooperation level. And thirdly, the British should have learned a lesson for this, that we're not going to fight fair. We're not going to get in a big square, and we're not going to fight you that way. We're going to hit and run. We're going to learn things from the Native Americans. And they lost 300 men on the way back, and it was a huge embarrassment for them. So yes, the colonists lost their weapon stash. And yes, they couldn't stand up to the British Army face to face, but the British are incredibly embarrassed by the fact that the colonists stood up to them. And we have now committed full-on rebellion at this point. So we haven't declared independence officially yet, but it's around the corner, and we've actually shot and killed some British soldiers. All right, that's the end of Section 3. Please email me if you have any questions. That should help you fill out your notes. I hope you guys feel better or, have fun in quarantine, I guess. Talk to you later.